Welcome back to the Paranormal State, Washington, and UFO UAP. With Makāula Nakae, a lifelong experiencer and ET contactee since 1990. Today's episode, 1965 Kecksburg Incident, Pennsylvania. The Kecksburg Incident, 1965, the bell-shaped enigma and the Nazi legend. Often dubbed Pennsylvania's Roswell, the Kecksburg UFO incident on December 9, 1965, remains one of the most heavily debated close encounter cases in North American history. It blends a massive multi-state atmospheric event with intense military secrecy, a peculiar acorn-shaped craft, and decades of government stonewalling. The event began late in the afternoon, around 4:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when a brilliant roaring fireball streaked across the sky. Thousands of people across at least 6 U.S. states, including Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Indiana, and West Virginia, as well as Ontario, Canada, witnessed the fiery object. Seismographs near Detroit recorded shockwaves from its passage. Pilots filed flight reports, and falling metal debris reportedly sparked small grass fires in parts of northern Ohio. As the object moved over western Pennsylvania, local residents in the small wooded town of Kecksburg, about 30 miles southeast of Pittsburgh, heard a heavy thump, felt vibrations, and saw wisps of blue smoke rising from a dense, remote ravine. Unlike standard meteorite impacts or plane crashes, local youths, residents, and volunteer firefighters who rushed into the snowy, densely wooded ravine reported encountering something entirely anomalous. Multiple independent witnesses described an object roughly 10 to 12 feet long, the physical size and bulk of a classic Volkswagen Beetle that looked strikingly like an acorn or a metal bell. It featured a smooth, unified hull resting partially embedded in the forest floor, with no wings, tail assemblies, external jet intakes, propellers, or visible propulsion ports. Observers noted a dull, metallic, or dark bronze-like appearance resembling heavy cast metal. Running around the base was a raised bumper or band stamped with embossed, unreadable geometric symbols that witnesses likened to ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, stellar maps, or runic scripts. Within hours, Pennsylvania State Police, local firemen, and units from a nearby U.S. Army radar station cordoned off the woods. Witnesses claimed they were ordered away at gunpoint and later saw a heavy tarp-covered object loaded onto a military flatbed truck under armed escort. The military's official stance at the time was swift and dismissive. They searched the woods, found nothing of interest, and claimed the fireball was simply a routine meteor or bolide. However, public skepticism boiled over because of the aggressive military mobilization. Investigative journalists and civilian researchers, most notably John Murphy and later Leslie Kean through a Freedom of Information Act (FOI) lawsuit against NASA, spent decades battling government agencies for records. In 2005, NASA released a stunning admission. They had examined metal fragments from the Kecksburg site and determined they belonged to Cosmos 96. A failed Soviet satellite that re-entered the atmosphere. However, they later stoked conspiracy flames by admitting that the original physical files and records of their findings had been lost since 1987. Space analysts note the timing roughly aligns with Cosmos 96. But orbital mechanics experts point out that the satellite's trajectory and steep descent angle do not cleanly match the controlled physical accounts and reported directional turns of the Kecksburg object. Because of the object's distinct bell-like morphology, Kecksburg birthed one of the most bizarre crossovers in fringe history, the link to Die Glocke the Bell. According to post-war alternative history accounts, Die Glocke was a legendary, top-secret Nazi wonder weapon, a heavy, metallic, bell-shaped device powered by an exotic substance called Serum 525 that allegedly experimented with anti-gravity, torsion fields, or time manipulation. Proponents argue that Allied forces recovered this research during World War II, and that the Kecksburg object was either an unacknowledged U.S. continuation of that technology testing gone awry, an original German bell left in secret storage, or an alien craft that originally inspired the Nazi experiments. The lore of the bell is anchored entirely to a single narrative origin: the Wenceslas mine near the Czech-Polish border, close to the Nazi SS Project Reese underground complex. According to Polish journalist Igor Witkowski, Witnesses among enslaved laborers and guards described a heavy, metallic bell, tethered to a circular concrete framework known as the henge. When activated, the device allegedly emitted a fierce violet glow, generated intense localized magnetic fields, hummed with terrifying power, and killed surrounding lab animals and flora via radiation or toxicity. Outside of wartime bunker rumors and the Kecksburg parallel, explicit civilian sightings of the bell in action are virtually non-existent. Aside from unverified anecdotes about Antarctic U-boat bases or electromagnetic anomalies around the henge ruins. Whether viewed as a crashed extraterrestrial probe, an experimental military payload, a fallen Soviet satellite, or phantom legacy of wartime Nazi engineering, the Kecksburg incident remains a premier puzzle piece of mid-century high strangeness. It serves as a classic reminder that when unknown objects fall from the sky, a heavy-handed government lockdown all but guarantees the legend will live forever. While massive daytime fireballs like the one that triggered the Kecksburg panic are relatively rare, history and ufology are peppered with legendary events where roaring, brilliant aerial objects plunged across populated skies, sparking intense debate between science and anomaly researchers. Two notable historical parallels involve similar fiery spectacles. 1. The New Mexico Green Fireballs, 1948 to 1949. Just a couple of decades before Kecksburg, the skies over the American Southwest, particularly near sensitive atomic sites in New Mexico, were routinely crossed by blindingly bright, silent, or roaring fireballs. Unlike ordinary meteors, these objects frequently glowed an intense, unearthly emerald green and traveled on remarkably flat horizontal trajectories across the atmosphere rather than plunging downward. Because they repeatedly flew over restricted military zones like Los Alamos and Alamogordo, top-tier scientists, including Edward Teller and astronomer Lincoln La Paz, were called in to investigate. While official conclusions eventually leaned toward unusual natural halides containing high concentrations of metals like magnesium and nickel, the military's initial panic closely mirrored the heavy-handed secrecy later seen in Pennsylvania. 2. The Great Daylight Fireball of 1972, the Grand Teton Meteor. On August 10, 1972, thousands of civilians and tourists across the western United States and Canada witnessed one of the most famous atmospheric spectacles in history. A massive roaring fireball blazed across the daytime sky in broad daylight, around 2:30 local time, starting over Utah and tracking north toward Alberta, Canada. Famously captured on film by tourists near Jackson Lake, Wyoming, with the Teton Range in the background, this object was classified as an Earth-grazing meteor, an asteroid that skipped off the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere like a stone skipping across water before heading back out into space. Unlike Kecksburg or the New Mexico Green Fireballs, the 1972 event was thoroughly tracked by satellite sensors and modern optics, providing science with a concrete baseline for what happens when a massive space rock pays a low, roaring visit to our atmosphere in the middle of the day. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archived Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3. The First Contact and the Paranormal State. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute exploration into the evolution of ufology, perfect for your daily plunge into decoding hidden messages from outer space, designed to raise awareness and foster human evolution. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Share your thoughts on today's episode.